This is Josh White with JW Math Tutoring. In this video, I'm going to cover an introduction to Desmos for the digital ACT math section, covering all the basic and prerequisite skills you need to know. So let's go ahead and take a look.
But life is a dream that calculus could never predict.
Before I start this ACT math video, I just want to take a couple seconds and let you know about my Improve Your ACT Math Score course, available on both Udemy and Teachable. The course features a wide and comprehensive review of ACT math topics, including how to use both the TI-84 and Desmos graphing calculators. It also includes general strategies, such as back solving and picking numbers, and a review of topics in algebra, geometry, probability and statistics, and other miscellaneous topics as well. It includes over 10 hours of instructional videos and over 20 total hours of videos, including solutions to various problems. So please check out that video if you're looking for more help on improving your ACT math score. Otherwise, if you like this video, please do give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and sign up for notifications. And let's go ahead and get started with this video. Just before I begin through these kind of introductory or background skills for Desmos, I want to mention a couple things here. First, the website where you can practice using the ACT version of the Desmos graphing calculator is going to be added at the bottom of the video here. I mean, it's probably too small to see, in the address bar of the browser. But if you want to practice ACT problems and you're not, doing an online practice test on their website, you don't want to go there and bother bringing it up, the specific address will be linked in the description of the video, in the pinned comment, and also at the bottom of the screen on the video itself. Second, most of these demonstrated skills are from my Ultimate Desmos Guide to Digital SAT Math video series. However, there are some things that I forgot to mention when I originally recorded that, so I'm going to add those in now as needed. And there are also basic background skills that apply to ACT math problems that do not apply to SAT math problems because they're not covered on the SAT, digital SAT math section. So those will be added as well. But for most of this video, you're going to see it's going to be demonstrated from technically the SAT version of the Desmos, graphing calculator website, but I've gone ahead and worked around on the ACT version. It's very, very similar in terms of how it's set up and what things are available and everything. All right, so with that being said, let's just talk about some basic things that we can already see here on the screen. So you see this wrench over here, upper right-hand corner. If you click it, there's a bunch of different things here. You can make the, basically size larger or back to normal. You can also do, reverse contrast here, dark and light. You can do stuff like turn off the grids and so on. You can add arrows at the top, not really necessary. You can change the values that are, that are displayed here in the viewing window for both the X and the Y axis. But that's most likely when you're doing a problem, you're gonna, zoom in, zoom out. So that's gonna happen automatically. Down here, you just want to keep this at linear. Do not, you don't want to change that to logarithmic. And then the most important thing also on this on this wrench, graph settings page is switching between radians and degrees. So if you need to do a problem in one unit versus the other, you would just come here and make sure you're in the appropriate unit, whether it's radians or degrees. You can just click select the one that you're in and so on. Okay, then notice right below here you have a plus and minus. This is to zoom in and zoom out on your graph. So notice you can zoom in and then you can also zoom out. But if you want to go back to the default standard view, just click the home button right here. Okay, now we're back to, again, kind of like the standard view that it starts off with before you've done anything. All right, a couple other things. We see over here, you've got this for an undo and then this thing for redo. So for example, if I started typing something in, you can do undo each individual thing at a time, or you can redo. So if you, erase something accidentally, or type something or whatever, you can just, undo and redo here. You also have this plus key. This is where you can add an expression or a table. So adding an expression doesn't really do anything. It just makes a blank row like we already have. However, if you want to add a table, which we'll use to enter in points, this is how you would do it. Okay, and then you could type in your points here that you want to use. And notice they show up on the graph. And then with this table, we could do regressions. We could do various things. Of course, we want to get rid of anything, delete it. We just, click the X here. Um, with the gear function, there are a couple different things you can do. First of all, if you have a bunch of different things listed here, you can just delete everything. So for example, let's type, whatever, 4 different graphs here. Okay, rather than having to click XXXX and get rid of all of them, you can just click this and click delete all, and they will all disappear. Okay, other things that you can do. So when you click this, there's some other different options down here. So there's create table. If you click that, that's going to automatically make a table here for this function, and it has default x values, but you can change them to whatever you want. So if you want to evaluate a function, let's say 30, notice it just automatically updates. 50, I mean, this is just y equals x, so whatever the x is, the y is going to be the same, but you can type in whatever number you want here. So this is a quick and easy way to evaluate a function, type in its x value and get its y value. Over here, you also have duplicate. So if you have a bunch of answer choices that are very similar, except there's like one number or one, plus sign or minus sign or one exponent or whatever that's different, you don't have to retype them all. You can just say type the first one, right? And then you could go ahead and duplicate, and then we could make this one plus 1. You know what I'm saying? And then we could duplicate. And now for this one, maybe like this thing up here is minus 2. You know what I'm saying? So the point is you don't have to retype them all. This is essentially like how you would copy and paste, from one line to the next instead of using Control C and Control V. Because I mentioned earlier, you cannot copy and paste using the keyboard in Blue Book. You can here on this website, but again, you cannot do that in Blue Book. So in Blue Book, the way you have to do it is, again, going here and then clicking this. Of course, you can just click here X to delete it, but that's no different than the X that you see here. Anyways, this, of course, just hides it to move it over to make the graph look bigger. Let's see what I want to talk about next. Let's go down here. Just going to move this up a little bit so we can see the keyboard icon at the bottom here. Okay, so down here, if you bring this up, you can see basically the keyboard. There's a bunch of, obviously you've got your number keys and you've got some letters. Most of these symbols you can pretty much just type on your own. For like an exponent thing, you just would type, A, and then you hold shift and hit 6, for the caret, and then B. So the point is you don't have to use this button. Same thing with like the or equal tos. You can just type, greater than equal to, it'll automatically type it. Absolute values you can type. For square root, you can just do SQRT. It'll automatically make a square root. For pi, you just do pi, it'll automatically turn it into pi. So you generally don't need these buttons down here. The only thing you might need is functions. So again, all these like basic trig functions or inverse trig functions, you can just type these. You don't need to come to the menu. You know what I mean? You can type sine of whatever, 60. I think it's so in radians, not there. Sine of 60 degrees, right? Or you could type inverse sine of 1/2. There we go, 30 degrees. So the point is you don't need to go to the function menu to access this. There's a bunch of again, all these statistics things, you can just type them all out. You don't need to access here. All right, so one thing that is very useful, very helpful is if you want to type a fraction, especially if it's some type of rational expression where you have x's, or some other letter in both, say, the numerator and the denominator, press the / sign first to create the fraction and then start typing. Okay, and then you can type, whatever, x squared plus 2x, and then just go down here, x minus 4, or, whatever it is you need to type. The point is, if you start typing first, and then you realize, oh, I need to get an x minus 4, x plus 4 on the bottom, if you hit the fraction sign, the forward slash for fraction now, notice it only applies to your last term. Okay? Technically, what you would have to do is the short, quick, easy way to do it is just do a close parentheses, and then you can do this. But it's much, much quicker and much easier if instead you hit the sign first anytime you have to type a fraction, and then you can type the top part and go ahead and type the bottom part. Okay? So that's one thing, just to be aware of that can be very helpful. Now let's talk about roots. So, okay, if you want to get a square root, the short, quick, easy way to do that is SQRT, and that gives you a blank square root, and then you can just type whatever you need to underneath it. If you want a blank cube root, you can type CBRT, and that will give you a cube root, and then you can type whatever you need to underneath it. Okay, whether it's an expression or whether you're graphing something or whether it's an actual number, that you want to type. Now, you can also get a generic radical. You type NTHROOT. That gives you just a radical, and there's no index specified, meaning you can make it whatever type of root you want. You can make it a fifth root, you can make it a fourth root, you can make it a cube root if you wanted to, you can make it a seventh root, whatever. So that's how you get a blank radical with any type of index that you want. Again, you type NTHROOT, and it's a lot quicker for those three things that we just saw than like going down here and going down to functions and then clicking and scrolling all the way down. Like right here is where you would click on it to select it. Again, it's much quicker to just type NTHROOT instead of doing all the clicking down there. So let's get into some basics now of graphing, right? So with graphing, you can just type the function itself. Okay, so there's our nice quadratic function. Notice that there's a bunch of things that are highlighted or clickable points here. So you have in this case, it's the minimum value down here, the vertex of this that's highlighted. You have the two x-intercepts, we're across the x-axis, otherwise known as the zeros or the roots. Those are both highlighted, and you also have the y-intercept, which is highlighted as well. And generally, any graph that you have, which has these points on it, are going to be highlighted and clickable, with gray dots. So let me just show here a circle. Let's see, minus 20 equals, there we go, that works. Okay, so notice here you've got a bunch of gray dots, okay? These are technically the x-intercepts. Notice these two right here, these are the y-intercepts. And then up here, these are the max and min. So it's only these two at the very top, basically the only two black points right now. These are the ones that are, say, on a circle, the endpoints of the diameter. These are the points that you end up using to measure the diameter if you want to find the radius of the circle. Or these are the 2 points you want to use if you want to find the center of a circle. Okay? So just be aware there'll be a bunch of points highlighted when you do a graph. Now, for like the first graph I did, was a parabola quadratic function. You could just type it in as it is, or you could also type x squared in front, like this, like y in front, y equals, not x squared in front, y equals. So notice I put y equals, nothing changes, same graph. You can also put f of x in front as well, and we're going to see here it's the exact same graph. Notice when you have multiple graphs, you can highlight, to take one on and off. Now, the red one's the bottom one, so if I go ahead and click it, nothing happens because the blue is already blocking it. You know what I'm saying? Now you can see I can turn the red on and off. So you can click on a graph to turn it on and off. We won't get into this right now, but just so you know, the reason why you would type a function with f of x is because you may want to evaluate the function for a point, like find f of 5 or f of negative 6. So that's why you would type f of x instead of y. Another thing to mention too is that you can trace along the graph here, but like depending on the function, a lot of the points are not going to be exact. Some will, obviously, but they only go out to 3 decimal places, so you don't know, like this point right here, it's 1.646.5.001. So we don't know exactly, like you can see it's even tough to just stay on it because it's not a clickable point. We don't know exactly, like this point, 1.459, 4.047. We don't know what the rest of the decimals are. We don't know if it actually does stop after those three, or if it just continues going on. So that's just one thing to be aware of in terms of tracing along the graph. And there's there are many other better methods to get exact point values on a graph for a given x or given y. And again, those will be later. Those will be in, once we get into the actual skills and operations. However, if you do zoom in, so let me zoom in pretty far up here, like where I was before. Notice if I do zoom in, it does give me more decimal places. So like right here, the x coordinate has 4 decimal places. Same thing with the y. So you can get more specific, but again, it's still not going to give you, you're not going to know if it's the exact value or not. Okay. Oh, another thing too, just to show you, another set of points that are typically highlighted or clickable will be intersection points. So like these right here. These 2 points where these 2 graphs intersect. You can click on them and get the values. So that's another set of point besides your max and min values, your x-intercepts, your y-intercepts. Intersection points are another common, point that's highlighted or clickable. Let me see here. I think that's pretty much all I want to talk about in this video. One thing I will mention, and again, we'll get to the specifics of this again later, upcoming video, but certain equations, let me see if I can get one here. Okay, so this one, okay, here we go. Perfect. I have an absolute value equation. Technically, I've typed this in. I've solved this. If you don't understand what's going on here, that's fine. Don't worry about it. But certain equations will not be clickable. So notice right here, I cannot click on these vertical lines. There's no point that it's highlighting for me. And so I can zoom in. It looks like one of them's directly over one, but the other one I can't quite tell. So just realize certain times when you graph specific functions, usually it's related to solving an equation, you will not be able to click the x-intercepts. Usually it would only be the x-intercepts that you wouldn't be able to click, or maybe the intersection points as well, depending if we have something else. Let me see here. Yeah, see here, if I graph this horizontal line, like the y-intercept, is highlighted and clickable, but these intersection points with the black lines are not. Okay, like I can trace along them, but there's no actual clickable, highlightable point. So that's just one last thing to be aware of or to keep in mind. Now, another thing to be aware of is if you want to do operations in complex numbers, you will need to click the graph settings icon over here, and you will need to turn on complex mode. And then you can technically do operations, with complex numbers, when you want to multiply, add, subtract, divide, whatever it is. So just be aware, you do need to turn that on. You need to switch modes. I mean, that's similar to a TI-84 graphing calculator. So just be aware of that. Another ACT specific function that you may have to use is the logarithm function. So if you just go here and type log, this is basically going to be base 10 by default. However, if you want a different base, what you have to do is hold the shift key and then press underscore at the same time. That's how you can get down here to type the base. Okay, so if for whatever reason you wanted log base 4 of 16, for example, to evaluate that expression, there's your answer. All right. Notice it's not the same as variables where, say, for example, x1, for example, if you want to type a subscript on a variable, right, you just type the number after it, x1, or if you wanted to type, y1, you just type the number after it, automatically makes a subscript. Not the same thing here. You just type log, and then if you just type 4, basically that's defaulting to what you're taking the log of. That is not defaulting to the base. So again, the way you do it is you type shift, and then the basically the underscore key, it is on your keyboard, typically at the top row between 0 and the plus or equal sign. And that will get you the base, and then You can fill in the rest, and so on. Now, another thing just to be aware of too is that if you see a problem with a compound inequality, you cannot type the whole thing in as one expression. So, for example, what I mean is, say you have something like this, negative 10 less than 2x plus 4 less than 20. Okay, so that's the whole problem. This is a compound inequality. It's technically two separate inequalities joined together as one. So notice you type the whole thing here, right? It gives you an error. So what you're going to have to do for a compound inequality is basically split it up and type in the two things separately. So for example, there's one of them, and then the other one, you would basically just take the part in the middle and put it with the right half. Okay, so notice to graph a compound inequality, or really to see the solution set, you have to split it up and you have to type them twice. I hope you enjoyed this ACT math related video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and sign up for notifications. Also, if you're looking for more practice in improving your ACT math score, please check out my course, Improve Your ACT Math Score, on both Teachable and Udemy. There are direct links to the course on both sites listed in the description and pinned comment of the video. Otherwise, good luck as you're preparing for the ACT math test.